Wow, 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 wow.
Wow. Wow, wow,
Hey,
wow.
Jonathan, hi, Gay. Wow. It's
It's
been
been
way
a
too long.
while. It's been a
Way
while.
too long. How are you, Jonathan?
doing wonderful. Great to see you as
Long time.
always.
We haven't seen each other in a long
I
time.
know, can you believe it's been a year already?
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so Jonathan, do you want to lead with the first question?
Got Gary Adelson. Question that I'm sure has been asked by many. 8 months ago, at age 69, I was looking for something that might help me with the excessive worrying and anxiety. I discovered MBSR and took the 8-week course. The worrying didn't miraculously disappear, but I felt I was able to manage it better for a while. Over time, I began letting go of taking time to meditate, and I'd like to get back to it, but I'm finding it very difficult to sit still even for a minute, let alone 45 minutes. I used to do, but the worrying thoughts that I tried this before and it didn't last. So, what makes you think it'll be any different? Are quite loud and unmotivating. Any tips for this now 70-year-old beginner?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for that question. Wonderful. Well, from an 80-year-old beginner, the first thing that I would say is like beginner's mind is something that doesn't disappear over
Mhm.
time. Uh, this is a kind of phrase from the great Japanese Zen master Suzuki Roshi, who founded the San Francisco Zen Center. He said, in the beginner's
Yep.
mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. So when you are a big know-it-all, you actually don't know that much because you're not leaving room for creativity or the new to emerge or whatever.
Yeah.
So what I suggest is instead of sort of just plunking yourself down on your cushion right away, what you might try to do is do some gentle, mindful hatha yoga, either standing and balancing or down on a mat and moving around in one way or another, and bring your mindfulness into the body in that kind of a way with your breath. Your thoughts will still be going on, so there may be anxiety, and you can watch that and begin to realize those are just thoughts moving through the mind. So it's a kind of a glide path into sitting, and I often will do maybe half an hour or 45 minutes on my yoga mat before I move to my cushion. So it's a very, very powerful way to sort of equilibrate mind and body before you take your seat, so to speak. The other thing I would say is no matter when you take your seat, I found it helpful to actually think of it as a radical act. It's not, oh no, now I have to meditate because I said I was going to meditate and I know it's good for me. It's a radical act of sanity to take even one moment and take your seat, whether it's on a chair or on a meditation cushion, and just drop into the present moment with no agenda. So no agenda means you don't even have to push away thoughts that arise. Just notice they're there. And if they're anxious thoughts, ask yourself the question, investigate as if you were in a laboratory. Is my awareness of the anxious thoughts anxious? And you may find that the awareness is not anxious at all. It's like the sky, and it can contain clouds and different kinds of weather patterns, some more pleasant, some more unpleasant. And if you think about your thoughts and emotions as weather patterns, and you're like the sky or a mountain that, is just experiencing any kind of weather as you sit here, then it becomes a lot easier to just put the welcome mat out for whatever is happening, rest in the awareness itself, and not be caught up so much in the emotional content of it all, or the boredom of it, or the even the discomfort that may arise in your body. So this is all a kind of way of befriending the present moment and learning how to inhabit it, not the way you'd like it to be, but as it is in this moment. And then a bad meditation turns into a good meditation with no effort whatsoever.
Amazing. So let's follow that up with Annie Faber's question. And she says, I'm certain my question echoes many already submitted, and I still need to ask, how do I hold space for all of the crises and traumas we are confronting while remaining grounded? I want to blame and judge, but I know that it is part of the intractability. Not too sure if I'm familiar with that word, intractability. Maybe you are, John. How do
Well,
I stand in
good word.
non-judgmental presence and still resist what we are not?
And still resist what we are not.
Yeah. So how do I
Right.
stand in non-judgmental presence
Yeah.
and still
Okay.
resist what we are not?
Well, I think what she's pointing to is resisting harm in all its various forms. And you don't have to, look very far to see, how much horror is unfolding in the world, whether we're talking about what's going on in Gaza and in the Palestinian world and what
Mhm.
unfolded in Israel and what's going on now for years in Ukraine. For reasons that, like, from an outside perspective, it's like for no reason whatsoever. I mean, just people killing each other out of sheer,
Yeah.
you know, not even hatred. I mean, just like because who knows why, but
Mhm.
long-standing resentments that go back generations. And
Yeah.
this is, in some sense, part of the history of humanity. It's
Mhm.
not the whole history of humanity. So we're both like the beauty and the horror wrapped up into one. And governments and governance are supposed to actually help protect and nurture the
Yeah.
society for its
Mhm.
members and also navigate international relations, so to speak, so that they are friendly and minimize warfare and all of that kind of thing, which never in the end helps anybody. And look, I mean, what happened in Germany during, that led up to World War II and then World War II and all of the death and destruction and horror and, sort of just the unspeakable horrors of
Mhm.
the genocide conducted by one of the sort of most advanced cultures of Europe that gave rise to Mozart, Beethoven,
Mhm.
and the like, also gave rise to Hitler and everybody that followed Hitler. And now we're all friends again. But how many millions of people had to die in between?
Yeah.
So, and every generation we develop more and more powerful weapons. Now, hypersonic missiles, you've got nuclear or, sort of tactical nuclear. We got to learn a certain lesson about like writing ourselves a restraining order. Humans, you can't do this anymore. It
Yeah.
will only lead to greater and greater levels of catastrophe. And even if you're thinking in terms of global warming, which is a, a condition of the planet that everybody on the planet is feeling. Uh, we need all hands on deck at this moment, collaborating as humans rather than fighting each other, whether it's Ukraine and Russia or China and Taiwan or Israel and Gaza. I mean, we need to wake up in a whole different way. And I think that how we deal with the news every day that we're confronted with, which is really what your question is to, in whatever way you care to, devote yourself to being a force for good in the world. It could be on a tiny little level because the little's not so little, actually, it turns out. Everybody, everything and everybody is interconnected. And while we may not be able to, completely eliminate violence in the world or war in the world, just me, myself, forming the intention to do that and educating one's children and one's colleagues and so forth, we can actually transform the world, and humans have to actually transform the world now because we're destroying, even on a planetary level, the rainforests, which are the lungs of planet Earth. So, we're at war with ourselves and with our own sustaining mechanisms of life. And that's why mindfulness is so important. We just have to wake up to it. And the last thing I'll say about this is because in Asian languages, the word for mind and the word for heart are the same word. When you hear mindfulness, it is intrinsically compassionate. And compassion is an action verb. So it's something that you try to, in some sense, alleviate the
Mm,
suffering of others, the
yeah,
suffering of others. So it's kind of selfless. And the more you do that, even in the tiniest little ways, when you see suffering, just meet it with kindness. That actually does transform the world in
yeah,
the little tiny ways, but not at all insignificant. And if all
mm,
of us were to do this and talk about it more and cultivate it more,
mhm,
and I think this is happening, the world is going to be very different. 40 years ago, there were no podcasts, and there was certainly no podcasts about mindfulness.
yeah,
And there was no Facebook page, about, people who teach mindfulness. And now, millions and millions of people are practicing mindfulness. That would have been
yeah,
inconceivable
yeah.
in the 1970s.
So how long do you think until it is, because we watch the political discussions, the American ones, even though we're here in the UK, and
Yeah.
it was a global show. How do you feel when you watch that? Because everything that you're speaking of, it's not even touched upon. It's not even, sniffed at
Yeah.
in those conversations. And it's, how do you feel in regards to that kind of stuff?
Only terrified,
Mm,
just terrified, because the upcoming election, the electorate, the United States is so divided, and there's so much delusion on the part of so many, very similar to what happened in Germany. I
mhm,
mean, you had the Weimar Republic where, things were in some sense very beautiful, but there was undercurrents of deep dissatisfaction after
yeah,
World War One. And so it could be manipulated by people who are really coming from a place of hatred.
yeah,
And that's what's happening, is that half of the United States is fallen into a certain kind of hatred or anger that has deep roots that have a certain degree of legitimacy. People do not feel seen or met or heard, and all the wealth is being concentrated in a very small number of, sort of
mhm,
corporate, sort of places. And some people see it one way, and some other people see it as another way. And now you've got these camps that are, because of what Trump is doing, fabricating a reality where it's a kind of total delusion, and people don't even see that, you know, what they're aspiring to is impossible to attain in the way they want to attain it. Everybody wants to be a billionaire, but you don't need to be a billionaire. All you need to do is have your fair share. But the way capitalism is set up, very often people don't feel like they are,
yeah,
getting their fair share. So those are the kinds of forces that actually need to, in some sense, restructure themselves so that everybody has a blood supply in the body politic, an adequate blood supply. And that would, of course, be an income. And they talk about like, so the divisiveness, we don't know whether democracy, even as we know it, as imperfect as we know it, will even survive past November 5th this year in the United States. It
yeah,
is terrifying. It
yeah,
is terrifying. And there's so much anger and there's so much resentment that there are elements of true dehumanization.
yeah.
And it's not helped by people losing their minds and trying to kill people like,
Mm,
Trump or anybody else to solve that problem, because it
yeah,
never solves any problems.
yeah. And it's a shame when you hear like so many millions and billions spent on arms and sending weapons here and sending weapons there. It's like, what if we spent billions in in peace talks and compassion, and or even a fraction of that?
Yeah, but where's the
It's not
money?
even. Yeah, well,
Where's the
exactly.
money? The
Yeah.
money's not in peace talks. The money's in, imagine you're making all these bombs and they're getting dropped on innocent people, then they have to be resupplied, right? So
Yeah.
what a great business model. You just keep making
It's
weapons of
ridiculous. Yeah.
mass destruction and killing, and they get used, and then you need more of them. So this is kind of a certain kind of insanity. It's like a cancer. If you think about all of humanity as like one body, not
Yeah.
even just the UK or the United States, but the body politic, then we're all cells of the one body politic. And every cell in your body, of which there are trillions, it needs an adequate energy supply. It needs an adequate oxygen supply. And if it doesn't get it, it necroses, it dies, and then you die.
Yep. All right, Jonathan, hit us with the next one.
Yeah, well said. All right, next comes from Catherine Cat Galley. Hi there. Regarding questions for Jon, how does one deal with a family member who is a narcissist? Either how to not deal with them to keep peace within the family, or how to help them see the way, wake up, get it.
That's a very hard question. And my real authentic answer would be I don't have the slightest idea. Some things are really, really hard. And when we have different perspectives and somebody is, as I understand the word narcissist, it's somebody who is so admiring and in love with some warped narrative of who they are that it makes it that everybody else in relationship to them, it's a kind of an instrumental transaction type of thing rather than any kind of authentic meeting of minds or hearts. So that's a very, very hard nut to crack. And I think ultimately the answer to that kind of a question is compassion. That you meet a person with as much open-hearted presence and compassion and acceptance as possible, but you don't allow their energies to become abusive to you. And there are some relationships that really have to be ended because they're abusive. But within the context of family craziness, of which there is, of course, a lot, you try to be as kind of open as possible to how much communication is healthy for you and how much communication is actually effective in like maybe reconnecting on some level with the other. But that's non-trivial, and often um, it winds up not happening, and just people become estranged from each other within families, and easier not to talk, not to see each other than to actually do that hard work. And nobody's right, by the way. That's the most important thing, is if you think you're right and the other person is deranged, and you build a story around how deranged they are, you could be right to a very large extent, but you're not entirely right. And they are at the same time building the same kind of story, but have the percentages reversed, so that you're the one that's really deranged and they're the one that's pretty much, you know, sane. And so humor can be a tremendous leveler in a certain way, because once you start laughing, I mean, when we're laughing together, we're together, we're sharing a moment. And so humor can be a very disarming way to reconnect. But again, it's not easy.
Thanks for that, John. Vicky Cook says, any parenting tips about how to encourage teenagers to incorporate mindfulness practice into their daily lives, given the pressure to always be connected to their phone, YouTube Shorts, TikTok? My boys can't bear to do nothing or be bored.
Well, it takes a long time to befriend boredom, to learn that boredom actually is your friend. And in the old days, before phones and the digital universe, kids actually played out in the street. And they
Yeah.
figured out ways to play. I mean, I grew up in New York City and I played out in the street all the time with whoever was out in the street. You made friends with whoever was in the neighborhood. Uh, Before everybody moved to the suburbs and it became a different kind of culture. But still, without phones, kids naturally are drawn to play. And there's something about the digital seduction of children's minds that's actually very, very toxic. And the later kids are exposed to it, the better. But of course, the social pressure to get them is
Mhm.
going down and down and down in age. That said, the longer you can keep kids away from the technology, especially phones, their own phones, the
Yeah.
better. But how to actually get them to live analog lives. This is not just the challenge for children anymore. This is the challenge for all of humanity, and it's going to get worse with AI because it's so seductive. You've got a supercomputer in your pocket, but not just a supercomputer, the phone being the phone, but that it's interconnected. It's connected to an
Yeah.
internet where we're like, sharing minds. And it's very dangerous because a lot of minds out there don't have your best interests at heart, from the point of view of like they're selling your eyeballs, they're selling attention. That's what it's
Yeah.
all about, is keeping you addicted
Yes.
to their particular brand, whatever it is, whether it's
Hmm.
Facebook or Twitter or, or TikTok or whatever. They want you to stay on it because they sell ads based on, you know, duration of attention.
Yeah, and they can
This is
see how long you're looking at the screen
Yeah,
as
they
well.
know everything about
Yeah.
you and they can manipulate you to show you the next thing that will make sure you stay on even longer.
Yeah.
And then the next thing to make sure, if people have not seen the movie The Social Dilemma, they really should watch it.
Yeah.
This was put out by Tristan Harris and the
It's an
people at
excellent,
the
yeah, watch there. It's
Center
excellent. Yeah.
Center for Humane Technology,
Yeah.
and it's basically showing the toxicity of social media, especially with adolescents, but
Yeah.
for all of us.
And also the
And
intention behind why certain things are designed as well. When you understand
yeah,
why is
and
it
it's
they
all
do certain
for,
things, yeah.
I mean, I have an 800-page book right down here called
Mm.
The Age of Surveillance Capitalism.
Mhm.
Not just on your phone, but on your laptop. Every keystroke you make
Mm.
online is registered, and the supercomputers know what captures your attention most effectively. And they can do that by, like, if you pay using a credit card, they know everything you buy at every place you go.
Yeah.
And so the algorithms, this is not humans thinking this,
Mm.
these are the algorithms that actually get your number and show you the next thing that's guaranteed because of all your past behavior,
Yeah.
keep you interested.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you can just sort of, scroll, what do they call it? Doom scrolling
A
or,
bit of doom scrolling. Yeah.
yeah, you just
Boop. Yeah.
forever and ever and ever,
Yeah.
and don't get any sleep. That's why Facebook finally just sort of, changed their rules about it, as I said in today's paper.
Mhm.
But, excuse me, but this is like the major challenge of our time, and my feeling is we need to learn to listen to nature, to get back into nature, to leave our
Yeah.
phones behind and get out there and remember that we ourselves are more miraculous than all of that technology. I mean, we are our own kind of technology, and I like to say the result of only 13.8 billion years
Of
of
refinement. Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
since the Big Bang, and that we are miraculous beings, geniuses, and we need to, and I mean this instrumentally, realize, wake up to our own beauty and our multiple intelligences independent of the digital stuff.
Mm.
And the kind of trust in embodied wakefulness. And that's what meditation is kind of like, it's not like it's something you're trying to get. Awareness is already yours. And
Mhm.
let's think about mindfulness as just pure awareness, okay?
Mhm.
Or relationality. So it's not like you have to hunt for anything or sit down on your cushion and, okay, now what's supposed to happen? What's happening is already happening. You learn to befriend your awareness
Mhm.
and live inside of it, and then time falls away because there's only this moment. The past is gone, the future hasn't happened yet. So it's a continual unfolding of present moments in and embodied. And when you do that and you're not trying to have some special experience, you discover that, holy cow, every moment is a special experience. Would you rather not be breathing in this moment? Pretty special. So if you shift your attitude about it, then walking down the street becomes like, it doesn't matter if you're not in Paris or London or some beautiful place. Walking down the street, you're seeing human beings. Every single one of them is a kind of miraculous being. You see a
Love it.
tree, you hear a bird. There's nothing but wonder and a sense of kind of awe if you can see behind the thinking that actually kind of thinks it understands everything and so prevents you from experiencing anything.
Yeah.
And it's an ongoing practice. That's the last thing I'll say is it's like
Yeah.
every moment you have to begin again, moment by moment by moment by moment. But that's what we're doing anyway. If it weren't for this next in-breath, you would be gone. So the biology of 13.8 billion years of evolution has brought you to this point, pretty miraculous.
Yeah.
Love it while you can because it ain't forever.
Yeah. And to think
And
our
there's nothing,
DNA
the
holds
other thing I'll say is
strands. Yeah.
that no
Go ahead.
matter what you think is wrong with you, there's so much more right with you than wrong with you.
Yeah.
We say this to people in MBSR all the time with all sorts of clinical diagnoses. But from our perspective, as long as you're breathing, there's more right with you than wrong with you. And whether
Yeah.
you're lonely or whether you have some kind of pain condition or your soul is, experiencing sorrow or pain, see if you can find other people to connect with and transcend the small sense of I and be a much larger part of the collective human we at this
Yes.
moment in time. And that's where the meaning comes from. And then maybe you can even use technology in a way that doesn't enslave you. So mindfully, if you pick up your phone, have it, be aware of what is the impulse
Mm.
before you pick it up.
Yeah.
Why do you have to actually pick it up? Why are you
Yeah.
checking?
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if. I
Mhm.
wonder if. Why do I have to check? Will I be more complete in the next moment if I see something on TikTok or Facebook or whatever? Or is it okay in this moment? And
Mhm.
then you say, okay, it's okay in this moment. In the next moment, you're grabbing your phone.
Yeah.
But you can actually train yourself to just look at it and laugh and realize that it's
Mm.
both your friend and it's your enslaver
Yeah.
if you let it be. But you
Yes.
have agency. We all have agency. And that's what the meditation practice is really saying. You're much larger than the story you say about who you are,
Mhm.
much larger than the story. So don't even build a bigger story. Drop all the stories and be awareness itself, embodied. And there's only one time you can do it. It's now. It's not like, oh, I'll get good at this by meditating for 20 years. No, this is it.
Yeah. Some gems there. Strong, strong knowledge there. Thank you so much for that, John. I think
This
staying
is
on this,
common sense, actually. I wouldn't call it anything
it
but
is, but
common
it's so funny how common sense to one person and common sense is like there's actually so
sense.
much
Well, that's
the,
true. We
the
all have
educate the education required
different
for that
karmic
common sense.
trajectories.
Yes, exactly. But sorry, Jonathan, I just wanted to ask another related question on the subject of technology, and it's from Todd McLeese from the Human Skills Project. Over the past few centuries, major technical innovations from the steam engine to the digital revolution, and you were talking about Gutenberg and the printing press earlier on, have pushed us towards fast work, focusing on productivity, efficiency, and speed. However, we're now seeing a shift with emerging technologies like AI that seem more conducive to slow work. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you think this shift might impact people and what role mindfulness could play in helping us navigate the slower, more intentional way of working.
Wow, that's a very beautiful question. And again, I don't know how, nobody knows how this is all going to unfold. But the more the world becomes one where the work is taken care of by machines and machine learning and all of that kind of stuff, uh, there are a lot of jobs that are going to disappear. And there are a lot of jobs that we can't even conceive of that will appear.
Yeah.
Um, but ultimately, the karmic assignment of human beings may be different once the machines are taking care of all sorts of things that are, like right now, science fiction, unimaginable, but that they say are coming very, very quickly.
Yep.
And so, the most important thing I would say at this moment in time, no matter how old you are, and especially if you have children, young children in the house,
Hmm.
is to nurture their analog wholeness, the full dimensionality of their beauty, of their being, and um, and then find ways to belong in what's unfolding, to play a role, a meaningful role in what's unfolding that allows for a sense of connectedness and satisfaction and meaning. And everything is up for grabs, everything is changing. So the most important thing is to be your best self. And that takes a certain kind of attention, it takes a certain kind of tending, a certain kind of appreciation of your own unique qualities, and then stay in not knowing what to do. The best way I've found to find the right path for yourself is to rest in what my Zen teacher called don't know mind, don't know, and be willing to hang out there in not knowing for longer than is comfortable. Very often, teenagers, like the parents want them to do stuff, and what are you going to do with your life? And what are you going to do with your life? And I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. How the hell could you know what you're going to do with your life in 5 years? In how fast things are changing. It used to be one generation, the next generation didn't change all that much, but since the Industrial Revolution, it's been going faster and faster and faster. And now with the computer revolution, it's going at the speed of light. And so we don't know what we'll need in 5 years to be able to even find appropriate work to get paid. But we do know that in 5 years, we'll be 5 years older, and
Right. Yeah.
we need to be our best analog selves to be able to interface with what's coming, with what they call, uh, Mustafa Suleiman calls in his wonderful book, the coming wave, which is the unstoppable wave of the digital technology
Yeah.
and AI.
Hi, Jonathan. How is something like this? As AI continues to shape our decisions through algorithms and digital environments, it raises questions about our true sense of agency. How can mindfulness help us stay grounded and maintain control over our own choices in the world where so much is subtly influenced by technology?
Wow. Beautifully framed. Nobody really knows the answer to that question, or there'll be as many answers as there are people aware enough to even pose the question. So this is going to become a large part of our meditation practice. How are we, and it's just like, how are we in relationship with the technology, whatever that means to you, the technology, the impulse to reach for the phone, the impulse to never give it up, the impulse to stay online and be, sort of caught in one rabbit hole after another, with no awareness that you're doing it. 3 hours can go by, and then you wake up and like, what happened to my life? Where was my sleep? Or who am I relating to? And everything else, or all online relationships that you've never even met the person in an embodied way, and they become like and you can lose your mind, and with like the QAnon conspiracy and all that, there's all sorts of things going on where reasonable people all of a sudden lose all sense of reality and reason, and then can create all sorts of unfortunate acts in the real world, in the analog world. So we don't know what's coming, okay? And but I would say it's a superpower. There's no question that AI is going to be a superpower. But we have a superpower too, at least
Yes.
one. I would say more than one. But the one I'm referring to is mindfulness, of human awareness, is a
Mhm.
superpower, okay? That's never gotten any recognition. And as I said earlier, it's not something you have to get because you're born with it. What we have to develop over our lifespan, and it's different at different ages and stages of life, is accessing that awareness in such a way that it gives us a coordinate system for navigating our relationships, analog and digital, human and machine. The best way to do that, I would say, is to devote some time every day to a formal meditation practice on your own. Then find a community of other people where you can also practice with, either online or you know even in the same environment, uh, in the world, not online. And then let the real meditation become how you live your life from moment to moment, so that there's no moment where you're not holding what's unfolding in awareness, not necessarily believing all your thoughts about the future or the past or me myself,
Mhm.
because the biggest problem are those personal pronouns, I, me, and mine, that are never big enough. So I've taken to saying, whatever the story of me is, it's not a big enough story.
Yeah.
So maybe we should let go of those stories and just be at home in the
Mhm.
body, in awareness, in the present moment, with not knowing.
Yeah.
But that's not an appeal to stupidity or to being unconscious. It's an appeal to being fully embodied as a deeply connected human being. So you're not just a monad in your own universe, but you are, the love affair extends to nature and other people and what's beautiful about society. And then asking that question, no matter what your job is, asking the question, what is my job on the planet with a capital J? What would I love so much I'd pay to do it? And there's
Mm.
like, just asking that generates a lot of creativity. What is my karmic assignment now? What what is so, because of who I am, what can I contribute that I don't know if anybody else on the planet can contribute, and it doesn't matter. What only matters is what I can contribute. What could that be? And small is beautiful, so it doesn't have to be some giant thing. And that's not kind of some kind of arcane romanticism. That's the love affair of waking up to the world that as it is now, and not being so bent out of shape about our fear of the future that we incapacitate ourselves, but then blame it on circumstances.
All right.
To make any
Well,
sense?
totally.
Yes.
And again, for those listening and hearing this, feel free to follow up questions. And if there are any questions that follow up, maybe we email them to you, John. But
Yeah. Or
but
we'll
I
have
think,
another session like this because I don't like to answer questions by email.
yeah, it's always misinterpreted, and yeah,
It's
and that
just
would
that I
be
have too much email already
yeah, yeah. I can imagine.
with people I
So
know, and love and care about. And
I can only imagine how many requests you get for podcasts, for interviews, and for this and for that. So we understand how deeply we honored we are to get this. So
well,
I think,
I'm basically trying to put myself out of business, and yeah, and it's unfolding quite nicely.
well, just on that, you had a period where you're releasing quite a few books going on, the
Yeah.
ones with the beautiful watercolors. What's going on now? What's the current, plan for you for the next year or two? Is there anything that you're working on, or is there any projects going on at the moment with you?
Yeah, but I'd rather not talk about them.
Fair enough.
It's like until they really uh, become more refined, it's better not to sort of put them out in the world in that way. Much as I appreciate your asking me.
No
Um,
worries.
yeah.
So I'll go to the last question that we had then. I think maybe Jonathan, you might have one as well. But so this is from Geraldine Sanders Westerhoff. Does coming to our senses then allow us to transcend our senses? Or is coming to our senses all we need? The mind is trying to help us, but instead hinders us. If the mind is part of the illusion, doesn't grounding into the five senses to quiet the mind trap us further into the illusion? So she puts in parentheses, my perspective is that I'm seeing a spiritual world and an illusionary world. I see the mind as potentially part of the world mind and then a spiritual consciousness that transcends world mind. I don't understand how we use the five senses to escape the illusionary world into the real world.
Wow. Well, um, this is the problem with thinking, is that you can create problems when there aren't really any real problems. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no real world. Uh, a butterfly lives in a butterfly's world, and it sees and moves in ways that we will never understand. A cockroach in their world, a bird, a hummingbird, whatever kind of bird, they all live in a certain way, different worlds, but also we're all in the same world. So it's unbelievably complex. And the most important thing is to trust in your own miraculous being and not get so caught up in trying to generate a story that understands it all because it's too complicated to understand it all. But to really stay more in an appreciation of the mystery of it all. And the biggest mystery of all, which is your own awareness. And that can, in my experience at least, help establish a kind of framework for navigating the world that um, is ethical and that is grounded in the aspiration to be of some use. What can you do being you that no one else on the planet can do? And offer that as a kind of gift to the world and perhaps also to yourself, because if it resonates deeply in your heart, then that's what I would call meaningful work. Meaningful work often you have to pay to do it rather than get paid to do it. So that's also a very privileged condition to be in, unless you're very, very clever and can figure out how to make it all work. But but I feel like it's important for you to not get so lost in the complexities of your thinking mind and analytical mind that you make a big problem out of no problem at all. It's just this, what it is, underneath words, beyond words, and creating this sort of philosophical conundra is a real kind of dualism that I don't think is going to get you anywhere except into more thing and more thinking and ultimately a big headache and probably not too satisfying for your embodied analog life. So I don't have any more to say about that in response, but I really resonate with where your question is coming from because we're all like so caught up in trying to figure this out on a cognitive level that that often it creates a lot of confusion and even pain about what my true direction is or who I am. And that's why the other superpower besides thinking is so important. Awareness is like touching a soap bubble. All this conundrum in the thought world, when you touch the soap bubble, it just evaporates. It disappears in no time.
All right, take us home, Jonathan.
All right. All right, John. So I wondered if you could touch a little bit on the importance of maintaining equanimity, not getting too caught up in those enlivening moments or those ah moments, you may call them, if they arise, and how some of that can lead to forms of inner and outer hype and suffering, and maybe we're leading ourselves on a big search that we just end up where we started in the first place, which is where we already are.
Is this your own question?
Yes.
Well, yeah, you do wind up where you started, only you didn't know you were starting there. I mean, T.S. Eliot's famous lines, in Little Gidding, the last of the four quartets, you know, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. So, yeah, it's the intellect, which is where that question comes from, is always trying to figure out what the value of this is. Why am I spending so much time in the domain of being, or trying to be in the domain of being, while meanwhile my mind is going. And I feel like I'm a bad meditator because my mind is doing all this stuff and I'm not really getting anywhere. So, is that fair to put it that way? Or am I missing the essence of your question?
Yeah, I think that's a strong point. Definitely. I think where I'm trying to come from is during our practice, years of practicing, sometimes things arise that we, deep discoveries, if you will, maybe.
Yeah.
We have things that maybe we were deprived of some of these positive aspects throughout our lives, and they start kind of coming to surface and they feel pretty good or really interesting. What is this? And not that we aren't finding enjoyment or even celebrating sometimes, but just you don't hear a lot of people out there talk too much about, and going along with what some of we were talking about earlier. How is
You're
some of
talking
this
about the benefit.
being
They don't talk that much about the benefits of their practice. Is that what you're
well,
saying?
they don't talk too much about all the hype. There's a lot of hype out there, and I think a lot of it is kind of conjured up from this type of getting caught up in the clinging on to the moments.
And identifying as a mindful person or something like that.
Yeah, or something like that. And maybe
I'm still trying to understand the sort of essence of your question so I can respond intelligently to it.
Okay.
Um,
I, I guess where I'm coming from is personally, over the years of practice, I felt liberated from certain things.
mhm,
Felt like I developed a wiser relationship toward chronic pain, toward anxiety, toward fear, toward so many things,
right.
and feeling this sense of liberation. And with that comes positive feelings, even positive feelings in the body, just decrease
Wonderful.
pain and increase joy. And that's
Yeah.
great. But, you hear a lot of people talking about not wanting to get stuck and clinging on to all the dark moments. But I think it's as equally important, if I may say, to not get so clung on to all this. And there's so much that you can grab from out there, TM meditation. And, I think there's a lot of people out there trying to teach people to let go and transcend rather than to, if I may say, to let be and don't get so caught up in everything. Remain
Jonathan,
equanimity.
I think you're just becoming a meditation teacher. I mean, yeah,
Trying, I
yeah.
suppose.
Uh, One famous Zen master is quoted as saying, "Ho ho, for 40 years I've been selling water by the river, and my efforts are totally without merit." So it's like what it says in the Heart Sutra is really important. No place to go, nothing to do, and nothing to attain. Okay? And then when you orient in that way, it turns out everything is already attained or already available to you because why? You've gotten out of your own way and you've gotten out of your own concepts and you've gotten out of even the concept of joy or wisdom or transcendence as something to attain because there's nothing to attain. What you're looking for is already yours. I mean, awareness is the most precious gift in the world. I mean, when someone's in a coma, everybody's unhappy that that person is in a coma, and we grieve them even if they're alive. They're in, if you're in a coma. So if you are in not just kind of zoning along on autopilot, but you're actually living moment by moment with some degree of awareness, that's sort of not too shabby. And then the question becomes, is there some other calling or work to be done? And that might be in the direction of greater sanity, reducing suffering, helping others, being of use. Whenever there's a hurricane down south, people come from all over the country to help restore the damage that's been done from not just the electric workers who know how to put the electricity back on, but volunteers that just show up to help people who have been, made homeless and stuff like that. So there's an enormous amount of goodness in the world that is looking for outlets, and we don't need to wait for the next tragedy to have that happen. Little acts of kindness, for instance, random sometimes acts of kindness, which you don't even have a reason for it. You're just like, why not? Can be incredibly um, enlivening for both the person that is engaging in that way if they're not attached to being liked for it or some outcome or receiving praise. But just then that's the path of the bodhisattva, a person that's not there for themselves. They're there for the sake of others in not necessarily big ways that have to be advertised on some marquee, but just little ways that make a big difference when you see another person and they feel met and seen. It's almost the greatest gift you can give to anybody, and it's free. And then it's actually reciprocated too, because you know it's also the by extending yourself, you get bigger in a way that's basically recognizing the infinite dimensionality of your being, and that it's intrinsically compassionate too. So these are not ideals. These are sort of moments that come out of practicing it in that way. But
Yeah.
let me just say one thing, if I haven't said it before to you guys, and that is, as I often say when I'm in a large group and we have a whole Q&A, and then there are always more questions than can ever be answered.
Yeah.
So what I often say to people is, look, what are your deepest questions?
Mm.
Articulate them. And then ask yourself, what are the answers to these questions?
Yeah.
Because very often, in order to even formulate the question,
Yeah.
sitting right next to the place in the mind where you can formulate a question like this are a range of possible answers.
Mm.
And you usually know what the answer is. You just want
Yeah.
to hear what someone else says.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
know what the answer is,
Mhm.
don't ignore that,
Mm.
because that's trustworthy and you can
Mm.
check it. And if it doesn't seem like it pans out, then modify that answer until it lands right. Because
Yeah.
no matter how many questions you ask some other quote unquote authority, ultimately the beauty is in the questioning.
Yeah.
And that questioning doesn't have to have an authority to respond with the answer, but what are your answers for now? And they may change over time. So that's a very important element of all of this practice, is to,
Mm.
not be a professional question asker, and then expect everybody else is going to answer those questions for
Yeah.
you.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Well, I love you guys.
Thank you
I'm
so much,
appreciative of this,
John and
and
Jonathan.
to be continued. And I won't see you if you tune into the live app, because I don't get to see
Yeah.
people,
We'll be
but
there.
I know you'll be there.
And
And I won't be at Omega this. I'm sorry.
Say
Go ahead.
that again.
Sorry. I won't be at Omega this year, this time, but I know several members from the group will be there and sending
Oh,
hugs
great.
from us to you there. So
How nice. I'll think of you there. I can always imagine you in the room there, because I've done a lot of teaching in that room.
it was wonderful to be there last year. Absolutely.
Okay, folks. Love you.
thank you so much.
We
Have
love you.
a
Bye.
wonderful week.
Thank
And
you.
once I get the first edit, guys, I'll send it to you, and I love your feedback as well. All
Lovely.
right.
Lovely.
Have a
Lovely.
wonderful rest of the week, and I'll be in touch
Thank
soon.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Wonderful.
John. Thanks, Keith.
All
Be
right.
well.
Cheers, guys. All right. Be well.
Bye.